Always assume that the person with whom you are speaking is lying to you. More often than not, you will be correct. Hello, everyone. My name is Joseph Suglia, Suglia, and I am here to discuss the question of truth. What is truth? It seems as if everyone is talking about truth these days, and conversations about truth seem to be polarized, do they not? On the one hand, you have those who believe in the truth, the only truth, the whole truth with a W, the objective truth, the absolute truth, the truth that is unconditioned and unconditional, the truth beyond all conditionality. But on the other hand, there are those who say, well, the truth is relative. Truth is subjective. We know that. We know that. I have my truth. You have your truth. Everyone has one's own truth. Well, I would submit to you that these positions, both of them, make no sense whatsoever. It also bothers me, I have to confess, how easily people repeat and maintain these asseverations with such self-complacency. Oh, truth is relative, truth is subjective, I have my truth, you have your truth. No, it is a simplification to say or to write that. But it is also a mystification to hold that the truth is absolute, that there is one universal truth. Both of these positions are deeply, deeply flawed, and they should be rethought. So let us address the hypothesis, first of all, that the truth is subjective. It makes no sense to say that the truth is subjective. None. It makes no sense to say, I have my truth and you have your truth. Why? Well, let's think about it. To begin with, no human being only has one truth. Each human being has an infinitude of truths, a plenitude of truths, an immensity of truths. There are trillions of truths that are engendered each second of each day. Secondly, how could one say or write, that is my truth? Hold on a minute. If that same truth is shared with a plurality of other consciousnesses. In such a case, well, it isn't merely your truth, now is it? Truth is not subjective. It is perspectival. Why? Because there could be a perspective without a subject. And again, a perspective may be shared by a multiplicity of consciousnesses. Not just one person, but a multiplicity of people could believe in the same truth. So how is that subjective? It's not. Each truth is a perspective in an ever-engulfing sea of perspectives, which is the same thing as saying there is no truth. Nietzsche writes in the 1885 notebooks, first in German, Der Versucher, es gibt vielerlei Augen, auch der Sphinx, nein, auch die Sphinx hat Augen. Und folglich gibt es vielerlei Wahrheiten und folglich gibt es keine Wahrheit. In English, the tempter. There are many kinds of eyes. Even the Sphinx has eyes. And consequently, there are many kinds of truths, in quotation marks. And consequently, there is no truth. So for Nietzsche, there is a perspectivity of truth. This is not the same thing, again, as saying there is a subjectivity of truth. That's different. The perspectival position is that there are as many truths as there are perceptions of truth. The assumption of the prevalence of any single truth is a flawed assumption. According to Nietzsche, the only reality is perspectivity. The only reality is appearance, if we must use the word appearance, which is misleading. It's misleading since it implies some true world behind the veil of appearances. But there is no true world. There is no true world behind the veil of appearances. There is only a whirlwind of veils and of veils upon veils. The world is a chaos of veils without any truth behind them. Well, what is held to be truth, according to Nietzsche? What is held to be truthful is what stimulates, incites, provokes our feelings, what agitates us, right? In particular, what is held as truthful is what stimulates our feeling of power. The same could be said for the real and the meaningful. I know that these are different concepts. These are different concepts, but think about it. What is held as real is what stimulates, agitates, incites, provokes our feelings. What is held as meaningful is what stimulates our feelings as well, right? But what incites my feelings is not the same thing as what incites your feelings. And what agitates my feelings at this current moment is not necessarily what will agitate my feelings from 2 hours, in 2 hours from now, right? Nor is it necessarily what has agitated my feelings in the past. You see? Here's an example of the perspectivity of truth. So you've got Keith and you've got Keisha, right? They are boyfriend and girlfriend. Keith and Keisha break up. They are friends, or they're friends rather. They're familial members, members of their family. They all have different interpretations and they project different causes for the breakup. Everyone has a different interpretation of why Keith and Keisha broke up. Now, you might impute the responsibility to Keith. I might impute the responsibility to Keisha. Another interpreter might impute the responsibility to no one. It's no one's fault. Someone else might impute the responsibility to both parties. Yet another might impute responsibility to a third party, etc., etc. But whether you ascribe the cause of the breakup to Keisha, to Keith, or to someone else entirely, or to no one, your ascription of the true cause, in quotation marks, of the breakup is dependent upon your desire for that to be the cause. Your ascription of the true cause, in quotation marks, of the breakup is dependent upon your desire for that to be the cause. Let us adduce another example. The capital of North Dakota is Bismarck, right? Well, wait a minute, is that true? Is the capital of North Dakota Bismarck? According to the Aristotelian theory of truth, truth is correspondence between statement and fact, right? So a statement is true if it corresponds to a fact, right? According to Aristotle. But wait a minute, what is a fact? How do we know that a fact is a fact? A fact is the product of consensus, right? A unanimity of people agree that something is a fact, that the capital of North Dakota is Bismarck, right? Okay. It is something, a fact is something that a crowd of people agrees upon. Simply because a crowd of people agrees upon something, though, that doesn't mean that it's true. This is a logical fallacy. It's known as the argumentum ad populum, which one might call the majoritarian appeal, right? So why is the capital of North Dakota called Bismarck? Why? Why do we call the landmass in question North Dakota instead of something else? Why do we circumscribe states at all? Have you ever thought of that? Why do we assign capitals to states? Why do we call that land area Bismarck as opposed to something else? Well, I know the city of Bismarck was named after the German politician Otto von Bismarck, who spoke about how sausages were made and who federated the German states in the 1870s, ending Kleinstaaterei, small statehood. You know, you read German history, you know these things. But why should the capital of North Dakota be named after Bismarck as opposed to being named after someone else, like Friedrich the Great, right? Why isn't the capital named after Friedrich the Great? Friedrich, North Dakota, is the capital of North Dakota. Why not? I get that the North Dakotan government at that time was trying to attract German immigrants, but why not name it after Friedrich the Great instead? Why? You see what I'm saying? There are no stable truths. Who determines what is true and what is not? Well, it depends on who has the power, doesn't it? It depends on who has the power. Who has the monopoly on the truth? And to whom do you accord the authority to tell you what the truth is? And why do you have the emotional need to do so? There are zillions of truths being generated every single day, and any individual human being's truth might undergo multiple changes within the course of a single day. It is not merely the case that individual perception is truth, which has become a cliche at this point. It's become epigrammatic. The point is that individual perception is not even stable. So it's not as if we could say, well, there's one perspective. That's not true. Perception is mutable, right? It's changeable. I might regard something as truth in 1 hour, thenceforth, from that point forward, that truth might be regarded by me as a falsehood. I might change my mind. There are so many truths that it must be inferred that there is no single truth in any given context. So what is the origin of truth? Well, I touched on this before, but to make it clearer, truth originates in the sensations of the body, in the desires of the body, in the cravings of the body. First, we project our desires, our own feelings, our own inherited desires, our desires inherited from tradition onto the external world, as if they were already part of the external world. But we are the inventors. We are the fictionists. We are the fabulists. We are the constructors of the world. But then we familiarize the construction. We forget that it is a construction, and we deceive ourselves into believing that it is already the objective world when it's not. We forget that we are the constructors of the so-called external world. Once we recognize that truth is perception, we can regard the whole of existence, whole with a W, as a vast work of art. We are the inventors of our own reality. So, there is a plurality of perspectives. There is no such thing as pure seeing. There is no such thing as pure seeing. All sight is a kind of rejecting and selecting by a singular human being. When we are presented with a space, we focus upon one object or another. We focus upon one person or another person. Or if you think of painting, sometimes we focus on people, figures of people in the painting, instead of the mountains or the trees or the sea. The object on which our eye chooses to focus depends largely on our memory. We reduce fresh new impressions to the familiar, to our own pre-existing schemata. Our past is projected into the present. The was is introjected into the now. The familiar precedes us. We create what we see, and we see what we create. The eye creates what it wants to see. This is why all truth is perspectival. Now, it is possible to become conscious of the fact, in quotes, that truth is perception. Obviously, I'm speaking to you now. I am conscious of this fact, in quotation marks, and I'm communicating that fact, in quotation marks, to you. If I become conscious that truth is perception, life can become a form of lucid dreaming. This is only an analogy. Now, I don't believe that lucid dreaming exists because I've never experienced it. And I cannot conceive of it existing, although I do know people, including Steve Balderson, the filmmaker, who has experienced lucid dreaming, he says. So I could concede the point that it might exist. I'm just using lucid dreaming as an analogy. So life can become a form of lucid dreaming if we recognize that truth is perspectival, if we recognize that we are the inventors of our own reality, if we recognize that something like an objective reality does not exist, if we recognize that causality does not exist except in our minds, if we recognize that we are not the causes of ourselves, if we recognize that our will is not the cause of what we do, if we recognize that we are not responsible for anything, if we recognize that what we think of as real is only our perception of reality, if we are conscious of all of these things, if we recognize, right? If we recognize all of these things, at this point, we become like lucid dreamers. We know that we are dreaming while we are dreaming. We are dreaming while we are awake. We are dreaming while we are awake. The term for this in psychology is onirism. Onirism is the term for dreaming while you are awake. It means to be awake, but in an oniric state, right? In a dreaming state. You recognize that you are the dreamer of the dream, which is your reality, that you are the spinner of the dream in which you are webbed. Let me say the same thing in a different way. Truth begins as a feeling, which is then etherealized into an idea. This idea is passed down from one generation to the next. It is inherited. It seems to be detemporalized, right? Ripped out of time and ghostly and inappropriable, like you can't appropriate it, and unsensory, beyond the realm of the senses. But it is none of these things. Truth is the sublimation of a desire, which is then ossified, which is then calcified, and then transmitted from one generation to the next. What is held to be true is what we want to be true, or what we have been trained to desire to be true, and that is all. Now, I have a problem with Nietzsche. I have been called a Nietzschean, and perhaps I am, but I'm a little hesitant to answer to that nomination. I have certain problems with Nietzsche, and one of them is the following statement from the 1885 notebooks. I'm going to quote it in German and then in English. Wahrheit ist die Art von Irrtum, ohne welche eine bestimmte Art von lebendigen Wesen nicht leben könnte. Der Wert für das Leben entscheidet zuletzt. In English, truth is a kind of error without which a certain type of living essence could not live. Let me say that again. Truth is a kind of error without which a certain type of living essence could not live. This is Nietzsche, not I. The value for life, life is in italics, determines ultimately. End of quotation. So the problem that I have with Nietzsche is his use of the word Irrtum, in English, error, right? Mistake. This is a serious problem logically. If we claim that truth is an error, if we suggest that truth is a fabulation, if we say or write that truth is a lie, we are assuming that there is such a thing as the real truth somewhere else. This is a misstep that Nietzsche makes when he writes, truth is a kind of error without which a certain species of living essence could not live. This is a misstep that he makes. And then again, perhaps Nietzsche is not making an unconditional assertion about the truth. Truth is a kind of error. How does that make sense? I suppose one could consider it to be a paradox or maybe a koan, right? A koan, a fable, a story, a parable, a proverb, an image that is not logically cohesive, but is meant to prompt enlightenment. Like that is the sound of one hand clapping, a koan. But let's return to Nietzsche's statement. Truth is a kind of error without which a certain species of living essence could not live. What Nietzsche is here suggesting makes no logical sense whatsoever. Doesn't this statement of Nietzsche suggest that genuine truth exists? It seems so. Truth is a kind of error, okay, but if error exists, does the truth not also exist? How could Nietzsche assert that error exists, but truth does not exist? If you say that something is an error, then aren't you presupposing the truth? I mean, it seems so. Something else to consider. Isn't Nietzsche assuming that his own statement is apodictically true? Apodictically means necessarily. Truth is a kind of error, but aren't you, Nietzsche? Aren't you also assuming that your own statement is true? It reminds me of the paradox of Megara. According to this story, the city of Megara is populated exclusively by liars, right? So everyone in Megara does nothing but lie. They're all liars. All the Megarans are liars. Well, one day a Megaran encounters an Athenian, and the Megaran says, I am a liar. So is the Megaran telling the truth? If there is no truth, what then? What do we call what we used to call the truth? Do we call it verisimilitude, which means seeming to be true? I don't know. Do we call it accuracy? I'm more amenable to accuracy than to truth. Oh my God. Oh my God. My house is on fire. I have to go. My house is on fire.